Good evening, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to News in Focus. My name is Faraz Patel. We'd like to thank you, the viewer, for staying with us on Hilaal TV, DSTV channel 347, South Africa, Vanderbijlpark. But most importantly, the family of the victims, 48 hours on from that tragic crash in Vanderbijlpark, are still reeling, and questions still continue to be asked with regards to this. Now, yesterday, of course, we saw Matoma Chilwane, the Gauteng Education MEC, and Sivuwe Kwagube, the Basic Education Minister, visiting the victims of, or the families of the victims in what we saw on Monday. And what the families have asked is that there should be an abolition of the scholar transport vehicles. We also saw yesterday that police confirmed that they've arrested the driver of the minibus taxi that were carrying the children after he was discharged from hospital with minor injuries. As we sit right here, preliminary investigations suggest that the 22-year-old attempted to illegally overtake other vehicles before colliding with a truck instantly and killing 12 children. Joining me now to take this discussion forward, I'd like to welcome Lesiba Mpya, who is the spokesperson for Gauteng Transport. Lesiba, absolute pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Faraz, and good afternoon to the viewers.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. Lesiba, I guess it's still sort of us taking it in as South African citizens, as residents of Gauteng, what we saw on Monday. And I think it's very difficult, isn't it, this time, when we really look at what happened on Monday.
Devastating for all of us, for us. We never could have imagined that we would have started 2026 in this way. But coming from the MEC for Roads and Transport is heartfelt condolences to the families of those children that we have lost. For us, I was saying to someone that these are not just statistics. These are children with names, with families, with friends, with dreams and futures. And we are seriously mourning as a province, and would like to wish those that are recovering in hospital a speedy recovery.
Lesiba, before we talk about, the technicalities, what it is required for drivers when it comes to scholar transport, I just want to speak on the human aspect of this, because if you were to take, obviously, and the Gauteng Health Department has released the statement saying it's 12 children that were killed. I know there's been various media reports. So let's just take, obviously, the 12 children, the statement that is coming there. It's very hard to digest it as statistics, because it's children who had dreams and futures. I'm also being told, so it's 14. I've just been told that it's 14. From our technical team. So we got Gauteng saying 12, then there's also reports of 14. So I guess whatever the number is, whatever the statistics is, it's children that lives have been taken. And I guess that's where, us as citizens really need to digest this.
Absolutely. Look, from the government's point of view, and these are confirmed reports, that the number remains at 12 until otherwise. The 14 number was a misconstrued reality. So from yesterday, what the Premier would have pronounced, those are the numbers that we have recorded as our kids that have passed on in that particular accident. Unless there's been a recent change, those numbers remain at 12. And I think we should then heed the fact that we are not inconsistent. The official number remains at 12. Look, yes, these are our kids. And over and above that, we would have started a campaign with the MEC. The MEC would have started a campaign called Itoma Gawena. It's sort of translated to it starts with you. And it's not just a slogan, but it is the truth. That a person must take personal responsibility, because as government, we can regulate, we can inspect, we can enforce. Ultimately, for us, the decision to get behind the wheel is with you and I. The decision that we are going to, not hit to the speed limit and text while driving and be reckless, it rests with you and I. So yes, we can have many campaigns as government in terms of awareness, road safety awareness, but the reality is that there is a very, very key element to road safety, which is the human and driver element. And I think that Itomaka is nothing but the truth, basically.
Lesiba, I just read a report before coming on air that this driver had an expired professional driving permit. So my understanding is that besides having your license, you have to have a PDP in order to go ahead and conduct the business of scholar transport. For the viewers out there that are not aware of this, could you elaborate on it from a Gauteng Transport perspective? Because one would understand that it would need, obviously, some sort of officials to give this permit for a driver, given that they are transporting children to and from school.
It's actually a rigorous process that goes through the professional driving permit. To acquire it, you go through, extensive process that also include medical checks. And yes, confirmed is that the professional driver's permit of the motorist or the driver expired last year. So then, in terms of the National Road Traffic Act, he could not be in a position of transporting passengers. So it can expire and then you can drive yourself in your own vehicle, but you cannot ferry people in exchange for revenue unless you have a valid professional driver's permit. And that is just legislation that can also be, or policy that can be a derivative of that national legislation. And it's a very, very important piece of the entire investigation because, there has got to be consequences. And much as we are speaking after the fact, it must then be a real wake-up call to everyone who drives recklessly. Faraz, I'm sure you are a resident of Gauteng. You've seen, particularly those that are engaged in public transportation, the level of impatience in pursuit of profits, driving on yellow lanes, driving facing oncoming traffic, disregarding red robots, complete impunity with regards to the law. And I think that we as Gautengers in particular, we should come together and call out those that are putting our lives in danger.
There's something interesting you mentioned there, Lesiba. So one person can have an expired PDP, and I guess to go ahead and chase down the person for him to renew his PDP is nigh and impossible, because what you do not want to do is sort of, I'm trying to look for a sort of mild term, micromanage the sort of drivers. And how do we then go ahead and sort of manage this situation, Lesiba? Because what happens is that if somebody's driving with an expired PDP, there already is an offense. Probable the driver could be charged for that, especially when he's doing scholar transport. I think, how do we regulate something with regards to this, Lesiba? Before we go to the break, you could answer that question, because it really, like you've mentioned, if Monday is not a wake-up call, then what is?
Look, it all boils down to extensive law enforcement. Section 49 of the National Road Traffic Act puts an obligation on a person to be compliant. When you are going to get into that road, you are expected to have a roadworthy vehicle. you are expected to have valid documentation, adequate licensing. If you are going to transport people, you have got to. It's a matter of law. And it's not a moral obligation. It's a legal issue. So if you are going to, whether you are immoral or not, the fact is that the law imposes on you to be compliant with its prescripts. And I think in this regard, in this case, there was total disregard of the law.
After the break, I continue my conversation with Lesiba Mpya from Gauteng Transport. Do stay tuned to News in Focus. We'll be back after this break. Welcome back to News in Focus. I'm still in conversation with the Gauteng Transport spokesperson, Lesiba Mpya, of course, reflecting on that tragic Vanderbijlpark crash that happened on Monday. Lesiba, again, thank you so much for staying with us. Lesiba, what we've seen with the parents, and of course we had MEC Chiwane and Minister Gwahube visiting the families yesterday. One of their concerns was the scrapping of scholar transport system. Is it as simple as just scrapping the system like that, given that the only dependence of the travel of the children is through transportation methods like this?
But as I remember, there's a man like you who wakes up to go to work, most probably at 5:30 in the morning, and you cannot have a situation where your child arrives at 5:45 in the morning before schools open. So we are heavily dependent on this integration of the transportation system. So it's not as easy as scrapping the system itself. What should happen is that we should improve on inefficiencies within the system. And I think that's heavily why government has got to play a role, but also as the community, as parents. This is a shared responsibility as well. Because you see, when it comes to private transportation of kids, you have got to understand that there's certain limitations that we have as government, because the choice between car A and B is with the parent. So, inherently as a parent, you'd want to inspect the vehicle. But there's instances where you can't even inspect the vehicle, because by the time the vehicle arrives, you are not you are not at home. And that is just the socio-economic construct that parents can't be everywhere at any given time. But secondly to that is that the parents are quite limited in terms of monitoring these vehicles, because the scholar transport private industry itself have ways of trading. You'll know that car A picks your kid up from your residence, but car A is not the car that arrives with the kid at school, because midway they exchange. There's a spot, they meet, they exchange children, and the likelihood is that your child is now taken into a car that is not even roadworthy. But the car that left your house, it looks clean. It looks like a very new vehicle, but those are the lapses in the system that I think government has got to put up its socks and really enforce. And that is why I'm saying that we take responsibility as government in terms of regulation and enforcement. And that's what we have got to improve the efficiencies and inefficiencies thereof within the system. And I think that we will be able to build a very strong integrated transport system.
After what we saw on Monday, Lesiba, as government, is there confidence that this can happen? Because it's a very similar point you brought up there. And it's a question I'd ask Simongele Maseko from the Greater Gauteng Learner Transport Organization, where we have incidents where your child is being picked up, but halfway through going to school, there's an interchange of it happening. And for me, that is wrong. And I'm sure you'd be able to speak on it from a sort of a criminal offense perspective, whether a driver can be charged for that or not. But there's a problem there, isn't it, Lesiba, that you are not aware of how your child is getting to school and which driver your child is getting to school with.
Yeah, of course. And formally or informally, it's just a breach of agreement. It's a breach of contract. As a parent, you know that the gentlemen and ladies who transport our kids, we commonly refer to them as uncles or malume in the townships. So you know Malume J to take your kid to school, but the reality is that Malume J doesn't even arrive with your kid at school. And Malume J would have made an impression on you as a parent, only to find that someone else takes your kid to school. And who knows that as a parent you would have done your own due diligence in terms of the record, the criminal status of this Malume J. And only for Malume J to hand your kid over to a completely different person with questionable credentials. I think that is a break of trust, and that should cease. But I said that there's limitations as government, because that private relationship that parents have with the private scholar transport operators, there's a way that we have got to intercede and intercept it, so that as government we are not bystanders of a relationship that clearly will not bear the fruits of our future. We are completely devastated with what happened on Monday. We've lost teachers, we've lost boiler makers, future judges, and dentists, and all of that. So I think that in preservation of this country's future, yes, there's got to be a conversation to be had between ourselves, private scholar transport operators, which are, by the way, are regulated. The only thing is that we have got to step up in terms of enforcement, because they're regulated under the National Road Traffic Act as well as the National Land Transport Act. So I think that's the position of government. We just need to have a conversation with parents and pull up our game in terms of private scholar transport operations.
You've mentioned enforcement. The conversation I had with Sibumbigile Maseko, compliance, after what we saw on Monday, and I think both you and I can agree, Lesiba, that this is something that we didn't want to happen in terms of the death of these children, to really have a sort of reaction for enforcement. But be that as it may, does this now put Gauteng Transport, the health, Gauteng Health Department, Gauteng Education Department, and ultimately from a national level to say enforcement now has to become a priority to make sure that what we saw in Vanderbijlpark on Monday does not repeat itself?
Oh, absolutely. You see, yesterday when I was with the MEC while she was doing a lot of TV interviews, she reminded me of an interaction that we had when we were doing a roadblock. So she stops with RTMC, a vehicle that is driven by a man who literally, when we checked, the driver disappeared, but he was pursued by our law enforcement guys. When we checked the vehicle, children were sitting on crates. Okay. And MEC then had an interaction with the kids to say, "Where's your driver?" They say he ran. He has tried to evade arrest. Oh, you think he's going to be arrested? Why is he going to be arrested? No, he has committed fraud. Why do you say he's committed fraud? No, it's because he's making us sit on crates. So kids they are able to see when things are wrong. But yes, of course, this shines a spotlight on government in its entirety, particularly departments that are interconnected with health, education, as well as transport, the entire value chain. It does definitely put a spotlight on us. And yes, the question has got to be responded to say what is to be done. And it's a question that must be entered into by the entire stakeholder forum, including parents. But I think the most important thing is that at the center of our interests should be these children, should be their safety, should be the reliability of the service over and above affordability, profits, and everything.
Lesiba, absolute pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for joining us. Much appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you for us. Thank you very much.
Absolute pleasure. That's Lesiba Mpya. He's the spokesperson for Gauteng Transport. After the break, Oxfam has released a report as the World Economic Forum takes place, and it shows that the billionaires are not just having an influence on politics, but also on media and social media. I speak to Oxfam South Africa after the break. Do stay tuned.